is the gatekeeper to keep me halfway sane. I'm in love with Jesus Christ, and since 1981, when God delivered me from the darkness into the light. And we're here to tell you that we love for you guys to listen to our shows on ProverbsGuys on Sundays. I do a designer talk showing the intelligent, designly creatures, plants, universe that is evidence, just evidence. It is evidence of a designer, or if it's evidence, I don't see how it can be, of undesigned process, but the cause we see of the material universe is better with the designer. We are helpers at a ministry in Gemma's hometown of the Philippines. Beautiful place, beautiful people, and a lot of poor people that we help out. Thank you, everybody, for watching ProverbsGuys Ministry. Jan Pozzi and First Lady Gemma out.
Pozzi.
There we are. Welcome, everybody. ProverbsGuys, the designer show on a Monday, only because technical difficulty last night. And so here we are with my good friend John again.
Hi, Dan.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I've had some great conversations with him on Christian citizenship. And of course, it's a designer show, so I had to say is, the God's design for Christian citizenship. And I just think we'll just have a little chat here, and I would love to pick your brain more. You have, you can start out just, the course, the teaching that you've dealt with.
Okay, right. Well, so I have a program that it's not of my design, and it's put out by an organization called Patriot Academy, and they've got a series of materials, and it's designed to educate people on the Constitution. And they come from a biblical perspective on all of their material. And they have one program, they call it Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, and they have a shortened version. They call it the lunch break version because the videos are only about 42, 43 minutes long or so. And so I've been presenting that material for a few times now. And so we can't actually show the videos because they're copyrighted, and they're, it requires more permissions to be had before we rebroadcast them on YouTube, live or otherwise.
Now, can people see those online in different formats, or you have to...
Yeah, they can go to patriotacademy.com, patriotacademy.com, and actually you just navigate their site, and there is a way to get through to the lunch box version, or lunch break version. I think they call it lunch break version. And you can view those videos for free on their website.
Very cool, because that's the one you had sent me, which was really interesting. I really enjoyed it, but I was going to wait for the video, which is right now, the video version with you and me.
Well, so we're not going to actually do the video version
no,
right
you're,
now.
You're going to be the video.
It's going to have to be a separate kind of presentation where people come to my class that I set up through Patriot Academy, because they have a whole hosting method, and by doing it that way, then they protect their copyright material and so forth. But tonight, what I thought we could do, we could talk about anything, but I did some study, and I sort of distilled the contents, not all of it, but the first portion of the first lesson. I've sort of distilled, and so I'm prepared to kind of chat through some of that, and then you can ask me some questions about it. And I know that when you and I were talking offline, church yesterday, you had some other questions. We can talk about, how language is being used against us. And no surprise that our adversary, is the father of lies, and much of lying is done through language, of course, and he's a master of it. So, there's some psychological manipulation that I perceive, and it's happening through language. And I'd like to maybe unpack some of those things if you want to repeat some of your questions from yesterday.
That's perfect. Well, one we just start out with is, what is Christian citizenship?
Okay. All right. Well, the Christian citizenship is the central thesis. Well, it's actually biblical citizenship. Okay. I know we're talking, Christian citizenship. I like to make a difference, talking about words and what they mean. I like to draw a difference, a distinction between biblical or Christian.
Awesome.
People will say they're Christian or something is Christian or whatever, but I think it makes it's a better distinction and more along the lines of the point I want to make is I think we should be biblical. Just to say you're Christian, maybe in times past that would be more meaningful, but it seems like people say they're Christian, and what does that mean? What does that mean? People put their own meaning behind, so they throw out a word and they have their meaning, and the person hearing has their meaning. I think it's important these days to make more of a distinction and say biblical, right? I want to be a biblical citizen, not just a Christian, but a biblical citizen. And so biblical citizenship is all about, first of all, it's part of the Great Commission. So the Great Commission encompasses, yes, making disciples, and even that first, but it's disciples, and not just for the gospel, but for everything that Christ taught. And he taught about a lot of things. He taught about civil matters. He taught about family relations and other important topics that didn't have to do directly with salvation. So it's, yes, we are to go and make disciples first for the gospel. I think that's obvious. Let's get them saved. Let's get your relationship, set with God. Okay, now that's good, now let's move on to, well, what do you do with it? What do you do with that, with this teaching? What do you do with this newfound spiritual freedom that you have? Shouldn't we be about propagating this good news? Of course it is, but it's not just come to church. Please do that, but not just that, but let's also inform the community. Let's inform the civil discourse. So the freedom that we get in Christ isn't only for salvation. It's primarily for that, but there's also a method. It's also a method for a free and prosperous society. So a free and prosperous society is sustained by biblical principles. Those principles.
Let me jump in there because, here at Proverbs Guys, we've been, we put the fundamentals of our faith, Christ and Him crucified, and belief in His sacrifice for my sins, for your sins, that bring us out of the darkness we were in, and that's what a Christian is, and following Him. And so that's awesome. And for the audience, present and future, we try so hard to be into definitions. There's people all over the place that call themselves Christian. Before I was truly saved, I was a so-called Christian. So it's definitions. So there was our definition, and yours too, on what a true Christian is. We are redeemed. We are made new, a new man inside of us, or woman, Steph, when you get the Holy Spirit. So sorry, you can head back on your train of thought, which was going awesome.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just kind of making the point of, what biblical citizenship is, and what kind of the point is of this material that I'm referencing and I'm going to discuss tonight. And so I'll just start over real quick. A free and prosperous society is sustained by biblical principles. And those principles must first be embraced by citizens with a biblical worldview. And as a society moves away from biblical truth, it moves away from liberty and freedom. So maybe I'm stating the obvious. And you read the newspaper, we know what's going on around us. We know that church attendance is, well, up and down, and maybe mostly down these days. The trend is away. Most households don't affiliate with any religion. Very few that do affiliate as evangelical. I know that's better in some parts of the country and worse in our part of the country. And Ronald Reagan, he's known to have said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And I think that's true. Now, any prosperity that we have in the nation is 100% from the Lord. The Lord allowed this country to be founded by vast majority Christian men. They bathed their founding in prayer, and they acknowledged God in all of their ways as they did their best as men to put together the Constitution. That we call them the framers, right? They framed, like framing a house, I guess. They framed the Constitution, and that Constitution framed our country. The founders also said that the Constitution the system that they developed is only suitable for religious and moral people. And what they meant by that, of course, were people who were biblical, God-fearing people who took cues from the Bible, or more than a cue, but they allowed the teachings of the Bible to guide all of their affairs. That's a biblical person, in my view. And so religious, and using an old sense of the language, a religious person would do that. And a moral, or I would say self-governed, but more specifically, a person governed by the Holy Spirit. When your entire citizenry, or the great majority of your citizenry, looks to the Bible for instructions on how to live and is submissive to God through Jesus Christ and is guided by the Holy Spirit, you don't need a lot of laws. You just need some guidelines. And the Constitution lays out these guidelines and has an eye towards the sinfulness of man. And that's why they have the separation of powers. And so this material put out by this Patriot Academy, Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, is an attempt to reawaken the people, and principally the church, reawaken the church. And so I don't feel like the message that I have is really for anyone who's not a Christian, because I think you can take what I have to say, and if you have if your way of thinking is not biblical, then you're just going to take what I say and think it's time to start a revolution or something. And that's not what I'm calling for, right? You're going to go in your own power. You're going to maybe make a mistake and think that politics is the solution for life. It's definitely not the solution for life. We are to participate in politics. And, I like to say politics, partisanship, and participation. So there's definitely participation. We need to be involved in politics as Christians, informing the public debate. Partisanship, hey, some people like professional sports. That's great. You do you wear your shirt, you display your colors. You want to do that in politics too? Well, that's partisanship, and that's fine. But that's really where most of the division comes in that I can perceive. And, when I hear Christians saying, oh, that's politics, and they don't want to talk about it or something, I think really, in my opinion, I'm exploring this, I think really they're reacting to abusive partisanship and how you've got a red versus blue. Maybe somebody's got a green color or something for something. And we love to get entrenched in our pet theories and philosophies, and so we all understand how partisanship leads to division. and we don't want to be dividing over things that don't matter. But here's the great error that I'd like to address.
Great.
To me,
That was the next.
yeah, the great error is, okay, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Say, all right, I don't want to be divisive. Well, okay, then why did you so completely retreat from the issue? You've confused partisanship, you've confused politics, and you've confused participation. And we are clearly called, not just in a Great Commission citation, but in many other places. We are called to speak the truth to everyone in all ways, for all subjects that Christ taught about.
And that's when, and I think was that whenever we talked about it, was a thing that the politics in the Bible, and that's we're kind of gearing it today. But we mentioned, because we just had a study in the Acts last few months, and what did Paul and people are like, oh well, when he went to Corinth and he was preaching against the idols and whatnot of the worship of Diana. But remember, it was the who was he? He was the mayor of the city. He was the head politician of the city, who actually started, or no, actually, whoever it was. It was political, because that is their politics. That was their politics and their religion, and they stoned Paul for it. But Paul, in a way, I guess maybe he got stoned because he was not separating church and state. I don't know. That's the argument. What do you think?
Well, he's definitely attacking the world system, and in that case, politics and religion were very intertwined. And honestly, I think they're never not entwined. But they're in that ancient context. The silversmiths were making good money selling little whatever figurines of, was it Diana, I think, of silver, and there was good money in that. They probably had a franchise. I'm just speculating. They probably did. I think there was a guild. I don't know. Someone can help me clarify if I'm wrong on those details. And so he obviously was preaching Christ, and that displaces Diana, and that interrupts the cash flow of the silversmiths. And caused quite the uproar. So I think I guess maybe a takeaway from that is standing for biblical truth is always going to cause some sort of disturbance in the political sphere. Remember, the word political has the word polis in it. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I understand that polis is Greek and it means city. So politics is the going on, or the affairs of the city. And so we as Christians are called to, okay, I'm not going there. We go there later.
I was just doing that for the chat. Just saying hi to Big Bad Mama. He is a regular. And
save that. That might actually be fun to talk about. So
I just wanted to make sure he knows we're. Oh, sorry, he just got in here. We're doing a little chat, John and I, and then we will take more questions. And if you have, as he's talking, if you have questions on that, you can throw them on up, because I'm gonna ask him some questions we were talking about the last few days. And so, yeah, thanks for that question. We will. Big Bad Mama, you know me, save that, because if we get going down farther and John's like, hey, where's that question from Big Bad Mama? And I'm going to go somewhere, you're going to throw it back on in a recent, a more timely time. Thank you, Big Bad Mama. And there's one more, and this is the kind of, crowd we have, John. And so really, I really appreciate guys like Big Bad Mama, because he makes me honest, because he's in your realm. He's smart too. So here we go. And then when we got in the second temple, Judaism, the Sadducees were can you read that? That's kind of
wealthy elites, and the Pharisees were more of the common man sect. Yeah, I think so.
And so again, that I just put that one up there to say hi to you, scripture. And so, yeah, we're having a little dialogue right now about some basics on the Christian. John and I being, I was going to say Christian nationalism, but I knew they would do a short on that one. They know my tweaked sense of humor on Christian biblical citizenship. So let's hide scriptures. Yeah. So as you see, John, it is a very interesting topic. It is a very a very frontline topic always, because and I think we've talked enough that I know. Okay, so get in here and fix it then.
Yeah.
I'm being swallowed by the lion. I thought
The lion. I'm just talking to a blue-maned lion right now.
With a mouth. It was eyes. Now it's down farther. Anyhow, so welcome everybody. Sorry, John. He was used to me on the last show. He was like, now I know what to expect from Dan. You should have. You've known me for how long? And, I
still came back, Dan. I still came back.
No, it is just such a great, great subject, because it is. And two, and I think you and I, and let's go right straight. Do we go to that yet?
Good what?
Yeah. Here, I'll put it down. Do you see that private chat thing? Because I do want to get your order. You've got an order in your brain, and everybody knows I just got stuff in my brain, and anything can pop out at any time.
Oh, look, I can see these. I can see the chat now.
Okay, that's the main chat. Oh, cool. And then there's one down below that's and no, and don't let me get off on your so guys, especially Big Bad Mama, I brought John in because he's actually got an organized brain like you do. I really respect that, but Big Bad Mama, that's not me. Love you anyway. Then so do you see the little private chat there? I don't know where we are. That might be coming later too then.
Oh, private chat down here. Is that between you and me?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. Now I got the tech. I got two chats going. That's awesome.
Man, so you're almost as good as me now.
It's working. All right. So where are we at? Where are we at with this conversation, Dan?
Well, we're trying to do the basics and just an intro on. And I like your word Christian, biblical citizenship. I did want to throw in just on as, if, we get some Pope as president or something, they're pretty mushy, but somebody trying to go in and take out, or what the founding fathers, I believe, was a church religion, a theocratic, political structure. I'm right there, Big Bad Mama, don't worry, I'll take the bullets for you. And just don't shoot me in the back. So anyway, Big Bad Mama doesn't like guns, so I think I'm safe. So, and I think you remember where you were at, because I'll be here to try to.
Well, you. Do you want me to just spark it up again?
We could. There was one more I wanted to ask first. Okay, we did that of what is biblical citizenship. I think you answered that quite well. And yeah, so go ahead and spark.
Okay, well, all right. So I kind of did the introduction there, right? Where as a society moves away from biblical truth, it naturally moves away from liberty and freedom. So biblical citizenship matters. So the Constitution is a formula. It's a formula for how to run a society. And so just like a franchise, like a fast food franchise, right? They all have a formula of some sort. They all have a pattern for how to organize themselves, and they standardize their product and so forth. And there's many different formulas that can work, and the few that work are obvious because they work. They're large. But in just the same way, a successful franchise follows a proven operating formula. Well, the Constitution also provides a framework, and the framework can lead to a healthy society, strong communities, good government, and responsible citizenship. Maybe I'll just throw this in here. It's not in my notes, but maybe we'll help Big Bad Mama a bit. You know, the founding fathers were not trying to found a theocracy. So what they did instead, and this comes out in the material and many of the lessons. Again, I tell you, it's a 6-lesson thing, and we'll be lucky to get through half of the first lesson tonight. But what they did was they analyzed history, and they looked, of course, at the Bible, and principally the Bible. Actually, most of their citations that they mention when one digs into. I haven't finished my study completely. I'm really just a student, maybe with a casual interest in the topic. But they reference the Bible, and they reference many other sources, philosophical sources, the Bible being the principal one. And they looked at history, and they looked at societies that worked and didn't work, and they tried to debug them and see what didn't work. And they came to one of their conclusions was a pure democracy fails. Pure democracies fail. And what's necessary have a sort of an intermediate thing between democracy and, well, we don't want autocracy. But anyway, so a representative form of government in a constitutional republic. That's what they came up with. They actually drew that out from the example of Moses when they were in the desert and the people were coming with too many issues. And I don't have the citation in front of me here, but it was basically where, he was, who came to Moses? Was it Jethro? Is that the right person? It said, hey, you got to appoint judges, right? Maybe I got that wrong. But anyway, so it's, believe it or not, the founding fathers were inspired by that account and studied to come up with a constitutional republic being a biblical form of governance. And the reason why they cite the Bible is because the Bible speaks to the human condition. It speaks to the truth of our creation. It speaks to the truth of our fall, and to where we are today and where we're going. And so the Constitution was written principally by Christian men. I've done a study in this, and maybe another time I can get into it more. I can elaborate on that study. In my research, my estimate is about 96% of the founding fathers and I took an account of the unique individuals who are involved in both the Declaration of Independence and then later on in the Continental Congress that produced the writing of the Constitution. About 96% of them are remembered by history as Christians. Now, of course, there were a few that are remembered as deists. They were, unfortunately, some of them were prominent, like Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and they were very high performers. And, their fidelity to Christian, to biblical lifestyle was questionable. But even they, the least religious, acknowledged a creator God, acknowledged natural law, which comes from God's creation, and acknowledged the necessity of faith in God and to not stray from biblical principles when setting up good governance.
And that's totally cool because, they came out of religious governance by the guy that was appointed by God Almighty himself and the King of England, and did anything probably but do as the government, as the people, as God would have wanted.
Yes. Well, what they recognized is that, and this is in the Declaration of Independence. They went through, and the Declaration of Independence wasn't just written quick. Just wasn't like they all met at a pub and this was terrible and this wrote a piece of paper. It came after a very long, years long set of series of oppressions by the crown, and one of the things that's cited in the Declaration of Independence were the use of, I'm going to use some modern words here, asymmetric warfare by the crown by using the Native Americans to come in and were directed against settlers. And so the nature of American Indian warfare at the time was considered quite brutal, and I think maybe by today's standards was quite brutal. So they were weaponized by the crown, and this was one of the main things that led the founders to be, and the people generally, the population generally, to be convinced that the crown actually had stepped out from under its mandate, its godly mandate to be a just sovereign. And so they, and that is one of the issues that empowered the philosophy of the revolution. And so they broke away, and of course there's history, and then then they create the Constitution, and the Constitution was written in large part in reaction to many of the abuses from the crown on the colonies on the previous decades.
Therefore, wanting to separate, not have a national denomination, a national religious head. You had, 10 Commandments printed on Supreme Court, even though we had prayer from in Congress and prayer of the conventioners themselves.
So in my study of the founding fathers and their religiosity, I very many of them were Anglican. I guess, is that Church of England? Not sure, but anyway, Anglican.
Sure.
Remember as that. Some were Quakers. A good number were Quakers. A solid contingent were Catholic. Maryland, is Catholic from the beginning, I think.
And wasn't Boston? Massachusetts, I think, was, from what I heard. Maybe not. Nope, strike that.
So even within the founding fathers, it wasn't, there's, as you and I know, there's no one Christian denomination, right? I mean, that's a very large umbrella. What does that mean? We talked about what Christian means, but there's no Christian religion. I mean, you can say it that way, but it's a very broad stroke. So even with the founding fathers, they had differences. They had theological differences. And so they didn't want a theocracy. What they wanted was a set of laws that protected everyone's freedom of religious conscience. And one thing that's important to keep in mind in context, and I have not yet done a deep dive on this, but it's known that each of the colonies had their own constitutions. So the Constitution we keep talking about, of course, is a national constitution, constitution of states, but it was meant to be an umbrella that extended over each of the states' constitutions. And very many of them were explicitly Christian. They said you had to confess Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, in order to be an officer in that, or to serve as governor, perhaps, or some other elected position. And talk about a theocracy. I mean, those states had it dialed in. The vast majority of them were very strong, and again, it'd be interesting to do a deep dive on maybe even the weakest.
So on that, our founder and one of the main hosts, Stephen, did a show actually and I actually did a debate on that with one of our good friends of the channel, an atheist named Robin, and hopefully she'll come in or come on by, because she has a lot of resources on that, although she's on the other side of the spectrum as we are. And so I would like to not challenge you. I mean, I'm like, woohoo, we pretty much everything we've talked about I agree with you, if not everything. I don't think anything I didn't, but in the fact that it is the secular community that is squelching the freedom of religion. You're saying right there, it's like, well, I even know more that George Washington or every president, even Obama, is saying prayers, even Trump, talking about God. Yet, you can't talk about it in public. You got to separate church and state. Was that ever something in our government that you know about? I do not. And then also, is that though the grasping of separation of church and state as defined only, the letter to a church by one of the founders, but didn't that kind of get pulled into the thing of like trying to get religion and religious people out of our government?
Yeah, I think so. And so, I'm not actually prepared to go deep dive on that. I didn't study up on it, on that letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And actually, the point of that letter was to protect the church from the state, if I understand it right. But the letter gets cited, and it's just a letter. It's not any law. It's not any. It's not even any. It's not in the Federalist Papers or any of those explanatory documents that we have access to. And it was pulled out by, I think, a Justice Black. I think like it was in the 50s, late mid 50s or so, and it was cited as a reason for this separation of church and state doctrine. And then there's more to be said on that. But that separation of church and state decision at the Supreme Court is something made essentially out of whole cloth. Just made it up. No real precedent, no legal foundation. I wonder why it's still around, to be honest.
Well, I think that is the power of the opposition to straightway religion itself. Whether and Diamond Dave here, he's Hindu, was in the Mormon church, and then went to Siberia, I believe. No, that's not. Anyway, correct me, Dave, where you are now. He's out of country, but again, there's so many. They want to attack anybody. And again, I and you would be right on board if it was one of the Catholic colony or colonies. They came in charge. Yeah, we're going to have the Pope in charge, or it was one of the Protestant Anglican or the Puritans or whoever. Oh yeah, we're going to take over the government. No, but I don't want the seculars to take over the government anyway. The religion of humanism has no place to take it over either, in my humble opinion.
So I want to maybe refine my position, maybe clarify where I'm coming from with my, my whole presentation. And, just a moment ago, of course, we were talking about that Supreme Court decision back in the 50s, which was then later used to take prayer out of public schools in the early 60s. And, I'm not here to criticize secular people or the secular elements of our society. I'm actually here to call to Christians. I said Christians. How about biblicists, biblical people, biblical citizens, biblical Christians? Okay, I'm calling the church, and I'm saying, I asked, I don't know why that wasn't overturned. It seems so poorly supported, talking about the separation of church and state, is it the way it was developed and codified in our law, or through the judicial component of our law. But let me go on to an example to make my point. So move on in 63, I think it was, they removed prayer in public schools. And so what happened after that? Well, my observation is that there was a golden age of Christian schools or church schools. So it's almost like I'd love to hear from someone who maybe who's older and from back from that day can help me understand a little bit more of the history or the thinking that was going on in churches. But I can just speculate, and I speculate the church said, well, they're not going to have prayer in public schools. We're just going to start our own school. And so it's like, wow, great idea. Now you've just taken your biblical witness out of the public sphere. I mean, I think that was devastating, to be honest, when those representatives who God entrusts to promote the gospel in society retreat almost completely. And we wonder why we've had all these social ills that have developed over these past 60, 70 years since then.
Wow. And so right here, a question I was about ready to ask that went right into it. Why do you think some people separate faith from other areas of life?
Some people, well, like Christian people, maybe is that what they think they're trying to say? Why some Christians do that?
It seems like that.
Well, I guess, and I'll talk about myself. I mean, I'm not Mr. Brave. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, crazy or different, though I do have some simple prescriptions for what a biblical citizen should do. Maybe we can end with that later on this evening. But there's pushback. There's I have a business, and so I need to be spirit-led before I say anything about the gospel. I need to make sure that, okay, God, I'm trying to talk about that. You just can't lead with it. There's a lot of consequence for speaking the truth, and that's actually sad. That's actually weakness. That's actually cowardice. That is not how we should be. We have the truth. The truth has been revealed. We have a resurrected Savior. I mean, why are we worried about anything else? Why are we worried about our jobs or our businesses or our house or our reputation, or if somebody says a mean thing about us? Or that's retarded. We shouldn't do that. So what I'm about is I'm not about attacking the culture, the world, or secular-minded folk or anything. My words, I mean to direct to the church and to those who maybe self-describe as Christian or accept Christ as their Savior. Great, good. Keep doing that. Let's go. Let's make it full spectrum Christianity. Let's make it biblical citizenship. And let's inform the public debate. We can do that. Okay, I'll now get into the solutions. I can't save them. The first one is vote. And I guess now, Dan, you've got people from all over the country, right? Dialing in, so they're not all local here, right? Okay. So in California, they mail ballots to everybody. I'm getting ballots from my 2 adult sons that moved out. Okay, I didn't vote them. Okay, just so if you're wondering. Okay. So
now, did they vote somewhere else though?
Okay, another story. Maybe, I hope so. But yeah. Anyway, one of them did. One of them did.
The problem is that there is.
My point is, let me make my point. My point is that in California, especially, there is no excuse if you are a Christian to not vote. They mailed you the ballot. You don't even have to leave your house, right? So, and in California, I didn't see the final numbers for how many people voted in our primary just recently. I'm guessing it was 6 million. It seems like it's usually around 6 million people or so, but there's 35, 40 million people in California. It's 40% conservative. I'm not trying to equate conservative with Christian, but I'm just saying, the ratios kind of go like that. And that means that millions of Christians are not voting. And we've got some really challenging candidates that are come up. We can talk about, I don't want to talk about right now because it's too off topic, voting shenanigans, et cetera.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if a dead person can get to a mailbox or a polling station, everybody should be able to vote.
But here's my point. Those margins of, let's just say at this moment, alleged irregularities, let's just say, okay, Well, I think those margins can be well overcome if Christians would become biblically minded, think through what the Great Commission means, and in addition to everything else that you do, at least return your ballot and vote to lessen evil. You're not
Thank
voting
you.
for
That was what is that? Vote to lessen evil.
Okay.
That's my new phrase. You talked with me the other day.
All right. Well, let me elaborate on that. It's in order here. So, we have a saying in our language. We say, "Well, I had to choose the lesser of two evils," right? So, like we have some sort of dilemma. There's no choice. We have to vote for the lesser of two evils. And what I find in conversations, just my own experience, and is that some Christians will say, "Well, I don't want to vote for any evil," and it's a good point. Who wants to vote for any evil? I don't want to vote for a greater evil. I don't want to vote for a lesser evil. But that sets up, if that's your thought process, that sets up paralysis. So we still have a mandate, in my view. We still have a mandate to engage. So I don't mean to play a word trick, but consider this framing a little different. Say, I'm going to vote to lessen evil. I'm going to vote to lessen evil. Yes, I know it's the same two candidates, and you could just, get paralyzed and say one's a lesser evil, and I don't want to vote. Okay, don't do that. Instead, say, I'm going to vote to lessen evil. I'm going to vote to, and there's a reverse of that, right? I'm going to vote to maximize righteousness. We're not given perfect choices, but maybe that can change over time. But for now, I think I'd like to encourage people to break through the paralysis. Yeah.
We had talked, and I've made this an open point. I'm really focused a lot on the abortion issue. Probably my mom, who wasn't a great Christian, but she loved babies, and she taught us to love babies. And we know that one day before it is birthed, it's a baby. And all the way now, we know from science that all the way back to conception, it is a separate human life. And so to me, a lot of times I've seen candidates as like, and again, instead of this guy at least will try to fight abortion, but actually your definition of going for the most good, even if that good thing is only one good thing, stopping the murder of millions and millions of unborn humans.
And that's what voting is. Voting is engaging. Voting is engaging the culture. Voting is bringing your biblical values that you have as a Christian, humbly, prayerfully, and you're considering the issues before us and before you, and you prayerfully vote. And I think that abstaining is abdicating your responsibility. It's giving up on your responsibility. And you didn't do the good that you could have done. I don't want to say it's like sin or something. I'll let that be your own conscience. But so not to make it heavy, just say, well, gee willikers, you could have done something good. It was mailed to you. You could have just returned it.
Exactly. And it's a different debate now. Somebody took it over, but Obama was like, wow, it was either, I don't know which year in his presidency, but he's like, wow, we got to do something on the border, the human trafficking, not just, oh yeah, you want to come over to work? No, human slave trafficking. He even was talking about in 2008, 2012, wherever in his presidency. And it's like, yeah, let's go for it. And it's like, oh, no, now it's an evil to stop, to say you're against human trafficking. Let's shut down this evil against humanity. So again, another reason for the good of people. You knew a guy, they put their farm in Guatemala up for the cartel bank, $20,000. He had to work 8 years once he got to the United States. 8 years on top of roofs, doesn't matter. And if he would have fallen off a roof, cartel would have got his parents' house, farm. And it's like, come on, guys. There are evil issues. I don't think anybody here thinks that somebody should spend 8 years working off a loan to get to the United States. Send me a check for $5,000. I'll get you. No, go ahead. Sorry about that. Next one. There was a good question on this is the Great Commission and discipleship, which you and I think links really well to it. And is what lesson? The lesson that starts with the Great Commission. Why is that significant? Or is that one of those AI questions? What is the difference between making converts and making disciples? What does discipleship actually look like in daily life? And why should a follower of Christ influence the community around them? Okay, now I'm actually getting to what AI was at.
All right, so your question is kind of theological. What's the difference between a convert and a disciple?
Yes, and then furthermore is that why should we influence the community around us? Again, not just Christ and Him crucified for your sins, not you're imperfect, He's perfect, but in the arena of Christian citizenship.
It's a witness, so it's a witness to the power of God in our lives individually. So, some of us, fall pretty far before becoming saved, and it's a significant witness when we're not running after drunkenness anymore or whatever else we were engaged in. So that's a witness. And so who says, oh, it was just the same when you were drunk as when you're sober? It's the same thing. Well, it's obviously not the same thing. It's objectively better to be sober. So maybe I can take this example of sobriety and say, well, is it good to have a society that has a central value of destroying life, of putting it through through like linguistic tricks and saying, well, it's a fetus when fetus means small human, but whatever, they come up with any number of language justifications, linguistic justifications for why abortion is not a problem. Compare that to a society that is the reverse and broadly values life, where the taking of life, the taking of innocent life is the exception, is abhorrent, is where saving life is the value. Okay, so one is drunk in the gutter all the time, and one is sober all the time. You can't have a Christian culture if it denies the biblical principles of life and growth and recovery and salvation and beauty and wholesomeness and liberty, actually, and freedom. So if these things are valid for us as individuals, perhaps somebody's particular redemption story or witness, there's no artificial barrier about extending that same circumstance to the broader community and to the world, actually. And that is the gospel, right? It's the good news is that we can have a relationship with God through the work of Jesus Christ. And so relationship with God, great, you get there, now what? Well, then you know what? There's a round trip. So then everything else becomes in order. Your spiritual life with God is in order. That needs to be the first thing. You can't force this backwards. You can't think that you can clean yourself up and not be a drunk and, give money to charity and live a good life and think you're going to be saved. We know that doesn't work in that way. But if you go the correct way through Christ to God, and now you're saved, now you can circle back. Now you can, under God, through Christ, you can inform the culture of, hey, there's a cool way. And it has to do with being reconciled to God through Jesus. And not only that, we can have an orderly society. And not only that, we don't have to build prisons all over the place, And not only that, when there's someone who's down or someone who's weak, we can help them. We can support them. We've got the resources for that. We have the values for that.
Next step on the staircase is, how can a Christian engage public issues without becoming consumed by politics? And I would actually say that's kind of like making politics your idol. Maybe that's a different question, but how do we, the issue of without being biblical citizens without becoming consumed by politics?
So, I like my little 3P word phrase. There's politics, there's partisanship, and there's participation. And maybe we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'll just touch on it again. I think it bears repeating. So what is politics, right? So I don't want to. So the definition, I already defined it in the show here. So it's informing the affairs of the city. Okay, so that's politics. So I think that as Christians, biblical Christians, we are called to inform the affairs of the city. All right. Then there's partisanship, and that's waving the flag, and that can be fun, but it does lead to divisiveness. And then there's participation. Great. You want to say you're not political? Fine. You want to just eschew partisanship, and you don't want to go to the Republican convention or, march in a Democrat parade or whatever, great. Don't do that. At least participate. So you asked how to not become overwhelmed by it. Well, I think be grounded, be a biblical person, not just a biblical citizen, be a biblical person. Read the Bible. Okay, we know the gospel. You confess your sin. We trust Christ to be completely sufficient for our salvation. All right, now we have a relationship with God. Now we can bring back these truths to society. So, how not to be overwhelmed? Well, trust God, and who knows? Who knows how much time we have left? I don't know that. How do I say this? So I feel called just to talk about this topic. I don't know this is going to spread like wildfire, and we're going to, the United States is saved because John Karras, gave a podcast or something. I don't think that at all. I just think I'm being faithful with the little bit of knowledge and the little bit of time and the little bit of opportunity that I have. I'm here. Thanks, Dan. You and I, we're together. People are watching. And so we're just going to do our part. And I don't think politics, of course, is not going to save the nation. If there's going to be a political solution in this nation, it will 100% be from on high. God saved our nation, and he got into the hearts and minds of the citizens, and God created the political solution. So this is not I'm not promoting a man-centered, a man-energized political movement. I'm just saying, be faithful with what you know and inform the political currents.
And that is so important because, we have the history of God's people, descendants of Abraham, that Jesus said, your father's the devil. They had the nation, the politics, and they messed up. They attacked Jesus Christ. So yeah, I think that, and again, well, maybe we can talk a little bit. We're here sitting in Northern California. Those of us, and I'm not into it, but I could be sitting here with my little glass of wine, pontificating on whatever, of course, Californians, we're just on the pinnacle of elitism. But, it might be different in, say, the South, where you're not going to even be able to run for election unless you're like, well, I'm from this church on that corner. Oh no, I'm on this church. That their actual, I've heard, I've never been there, but the church identity is strong in some of those places. And to me, and I think that's like, no, that's what biblical principles are, biblical principles. And I really like the participation, even in a higher level, like running for some kind of office, great. Even the school boards, and that's another one we had talked about, was participation even at the school level. And you touched on that a little bit about there's no more prayer in school, so we're going to make our own school. That those kind of issues. And again, California, I think our county, and I don't know about this election, but it's up to 3/4 going against policies that I think are in a good place. But again, the participation. What do you think about California? You been tied to any place else in the nation, or?
What do I think about California compared to other parts of the nation?
Yeah, it's because so I've had some pushback that's like, those Republicans, the South, they're a bunch of hypocrites. They're, doing all this bad stuff. But here in California, so I think what I'm saying is that all over the nation, and actually here in California, 40%, like you said, most of the state, when you do it on a map of the voting counties, is mostly conservative, and pretty much the same around the world. Around the country. So a big geographical area, think that a certain way is the better way. The good in politics. What do you think? Talking to a national thing that you're talking to somebody in Texas or something, that they're, well, not even Texas, they're getting a lot of California people in, so they're headed more to things that I would disagree with. But some of those areas that,
sorry about that.
Yes. Some of those areas though that you might be talking to, that they are heavily on Christian principles, whether they're Christians or not. What do you have anything to say to them, or even thought of that before?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm trying to sense where you're going, but here's what came to mind as a response. So I did recently speak with someone at the Patriot Academy. It was actually in context of, getting the questions resolved of copyright on this show and so forth. Anyway, and so we just chatted for a minute about how it is in other parts of the country, actually. And she was talking about, she's named some state like Wyoming or something like that. I think probably Wyoming, super conservative, right? And she was saying how their program on biblical citizenship, they cannot get any traction in any church in the most conservative state in that state, in the capital, except one church will dare to show the material. And the material I'm talking about it's nonpartisan. It is biblically based, but it's not aggressive. It's just simply, hey, this is the Constitution, and the founding fathers had biblical principles in mind when they drafted the documents, and that informed their debate. And they weren't trying to make a theocracy. Many of the states themselves already were not really theocracies, but they were almost theocracies. They had a firm, required a strong affirmation of Jesus Christ. But so bring it back to the modern problem. So if one of the most conservative areas of the country and the churches themselves are reticent to touch that third rail of politics, I'm just using their words the way they would say it, I think we're in bad shape, to be honest. And I'll repeat, my words are, I'm talking to the church. I'm not talking to anyone if you don't count yourself a Christian, I'm not giving you any criticism. That's not my point this evening. It's, come on, church, really? This is the Great Commission. And I think that there's been a linguistic attack. I think we talked about that a little bit the earlier part of the show. There's been a linguistic attack, and these terms, politics, partisanship, they get confused, and they're being used or they have the effect of paralyzing Christians from even the simplest action. And we're not having a good result, because I don't hold non-Christians accountable. I hold Christians accountable.
Yeah, and that's what I've, and actually to answer this question and kind of go off of it, Dave, we have a guy named Stephen Bolin on this channel, and he had he is had idol of his football team from his state college, and and really felt he was controlled by it. And the same, he was working for the Republican Party, and so yeah, there are people. To me, again, in California, we're like, yeah, whatever. But so on that though, with the continuing what you were saying, so we have other terms. There's like, oh, liberty, give me liberty or give me death. California will say, give me a bottle of wine and some cheese. It's like, but really the founders, the reason that so many Californians can just sit, with their whatever choice of material and cheese or whatever they like, came from the founders, came from that word called liberty, isn't it? Can you define, liberty? It was talked about, give us liberty, give us freedom. What is the liberty?
Yeah. So what is an American definition of liberty? Is that kind of what you're getting at, or what's a biblical definition of liberty?
Maybe both.
Well, they call it the pursuit of happiness, right? The pursuit of happiness, and that word has changed in its meaning when it was first written at that time, the early founding of the Constitution, and how we use the word happy today. Pursuing happiness, it just was intended to have a sense of being able to pursue whatever you wanted to do. With as far as like you want to be a farmer, be happy, be a farmer. You want to build a building, be happy, build a building. You want to pursue any sort of vocation. It wasn't about your mood. It wasn't about, are you happy today because you've, found a lost quarter in the couch or something. It's pursuing, your God-given life purpose. Whatever you wanted to do. We all have a profession. Presumably we're happy doing it, more or less. That's the kind of happiness that was thought of when we say we're free to pursue our happiness. And the idea is, in a free society, you're not over encumbered by innumerable laws and rules and restrictions and so forth. And a society that has few laws can only be so when the people are self-governed. There's going to be self-discipline, or there's going to be discipline, excuse me, that's my point. There's going to be discipline. There's going to be order. And either the order is self-imposed, self-generated, and I do mean that via the Holy Spirit, or it is externally applied through many policemen and many judges and many ministers of the government. So there's going to be order one way or other. And so if you're going to have freedom, then the people need to be self-disciplined. They need to be religious and moral and religious people.
And we did see that, and this is interesting. Dave is in Mongolia. I think I said Siberia or something. I don't think his wife sent him to Siberia yet, but he's in Mongolia, and his statement, around the world, Republicans and Trump are more center left, comparatively speaking, and that is true. His so Diamond Dave is a Hindu, and they are very strong. We're thankful that he's not, but we're thankful that the Hindus do not rule this country. But again, we are on a foundation that you believe, you have your beliefs, and we as Christians, though, should even do our participation so that even other people, Big Bad Mama was here earlier. Christians, though, with our politics, will make it better on the secular people, because you will give them freedoms. They're not, they're trying to take away freedoms. They're trying to take away, feminism, with the whole thing of, boys are not girls. No, my daughter should not, she should be able to be free to be in a space that's secure for her. And when you're trying to push certain, things that biblically for sure they're not right, but also, and again, and I know you, and we're not talking about, the different, conversion therapies or something like that, it's giving everybody the liberty in this democratic society to go after happiness in their mind, how, in their defined way. Is there any more of those words? Because there was a bunch of words we were talking about that, like, there's different definitions out there. A lot of them are pretty well hoaxes, in my mind, when they're trying to do their politics. Their politics would, and not even, you're not surprised if you are somebody who does not like Christians. Of course, you're gonna, not of course, but most likely you'll lean to trying to get rid of that. I think it's a good thing that we've had movements in this country, you call them far left, far right, that have been voted out, have been marginalized with different beliefs that helped cause a lot of wars in the last century. So what do you think on the call, the freedom? But do you think it can exist without self-control?
No, there can't be freedom without self-control. And so even if it's even a culture that I'm just trying to think, and this is off the top without a lot of study, but I'll just say it simply. How about Japan? They're pretty self-disciplined in a lot of dimensions. And I would say that overall, I know they have some very deep social problems. They're different than ours. Some are the same, some are different. But I would just say there's someone who's a culture that is I would say generally self-disciplined, and they have an orderly culture. Now, it's not everything, and I'm not whatever. I'm just trying to maybe point to these principles. They kind of work actually, whether you're a Christian or not. If you're self-disciplined, and I think if you're not a Christian, you're going to ultimately fail. But even at a surface level, if you're a self-disciplined society, then you're gonna have a greater degree of freedom. Christianity absolutely offers this framework. It offers, I think of one of my favorite stories in the Gospels is, where Jesus delivers the demoniac. And so the story leading up, he's what they couldn't tie him down with iron chains and shackles, and he was naked and cutting himself. All right, odd, living in a cemetery, and then he has the interaction with Christ, and we know how that goes. And then the part that I really like is the next scene where he says he's sitting fully clothed, in his right mind next to Jesus. And it's like, wow, that's how I feel like our culture is. I just feel like, sure, there are good elements, but we have so many demoniacs running around doing crazy things, anti-life things, anti-freedom things, and we just need an intervention from God. And I would love us to be returned to a state of being fully clothed, sitting down calmly, talking to Jesus, and in our right mind.
No, exactly. And to the evidence, because, again, the false accusations, oh, those Christians, they're going to do this, that, the other. And again, I think definitions, and we're getting to the part about the founding principles, but let's, I think this is probably a good time to end this one. Maybe get some more, or you want to go farther on? I don't know how your time and where a good place is to go with this. I think we've been going about an hour 16 minutes. So, but on that, I was going to say up to you on that. But with the with our that's where I was going. So Stephen, our founder of the channel, and he is, he went down the rabbit hole with the whole, putting politics and a party kind of above God and his own words. And so he is, it's like ex-smokers. Those people I know that are the worst on cigarettes and stuff have been people addicted to cigarettes, the old, pretty well common saying. But that he's like always with the warning, but at the same time is that that God gives people the leaders they deserve. God will, and we've seen that, I believe, especially one with the and I don't know how much you've been around. I haven't been around much, but the whole thing of like, in the South, there's a church on every corner. That's an exaggeration. I know we went 2 corners without seeing a church when I was driving through there. So the division, God hates division. He punished his people back in the day when they went astray from following him, leaning on politics or leaning on people, rather, following their leaders, following their kings. When King David he went astray, God punished the people. There's a couple revolutions in his time because he went astray. So what do you think of God? Do you think he gives us the leaders we deserve? Is that a biblical principle? So is that a reason we should participate more?
Of course, we know that God raises up the leaders that he needs in order to accomplish his purposes in human society. So 100% that's true. Does God give us the leaders we deserve? Gives us the leaders we need. Gives us the leaders that we need in order to achieve his purposes. Perhaps there's a chastening. Perhaps he desires to give us a good leader that'll bring prosperity. Maybe that's generally true, or maybe absolutely true that God gives us the correct leader for his sovereign purposes. But here's something interesting on that, and we didn't get into it, but the founders asked the question, who is Caesar? Who's Caesar in America? And I know a lot of Christians trip up on this one too. So let me ask you, Dan, short answer. Do you know who Caesar is in America?
Oh, no, I did not.
Who is the equivalent of Caesar in America today? Do you know?
No, I wouldn't, if we're talking politics and like the president, the head, but I don't think you're going that way. But
No, it's a trick question, but
I
it
figured.
shouldn't be a trick question because Caesar is we the people. Right?
Ah,
That is the initial and fundamental presupposition in our society, in our Constitution. It's we the people. Okay, so so you asked, did God give us the leaders that we deserve? What do you think? And so the people that are in occupied position, yeah, yeah. So people are in occupied position. They're largely, I'll say, largely a function of the underlying population that elected them. So if you have some crazy leaders, probably have some crazy people, and so if you have unbiblical leaders passing unbiblical laws, it's because the people were corrupted. So, it's there's a lot of work to do. I think if you're trying to wrap this up, I would just say, our trust must only be in a sovereign God. My salvation is only in Jesus Christ and the work He did on the cross for me. Now that that's been done, and the demons have been driven out, and I'm sitting, fully clothed in my right mind. Now, perhaps, I can take some time and talk on your podcast, and others can do whatever they can do. If you are a Christian and you believe that you want to live biblically, I just ask you to go back and study your Bible. Maybe perhaps one of these days soon I'll be able to put my class on, and I don't know, Dan, how we get that out to your group, but I don't actually have it scheduled yet. Maybe I can come on and announce it in the future soon.
yeah, and that would be right now. It would be a class that would be not live, not or it could. I'm no, sorry, it'd be live, but it wouldn't be able to have it replayed.
Well, that's
Is that the one we're talking about?
yeah. So we can do it live, but you can't put it out on the internet for reviewing, because that violates their copyright preference. But anyway, so what I'm calling Christians to do is just to do the very small things that are at hand: vote, sign petitions, and if you can give $5. If 1 million Christians gave $5 to one good cause or one candidate which will lessen evil, then that is the good that you might know to do, and so therefore we should do it.
And that's a great thing. On Facebook, one of my old classmates was saying, the typical more liberal kind of mantra, oh, how dare Christians go to church and then not feed the hungry, not da 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 da. And it's like, no, that's so out of context. Again, perversion of Christianity. It's see, all these friends I have, and I had my picture up there, even though it was bleeping out because I didn't want to just have your face, but it turned out better anyway. But these are some folks that we partner with. They pray for us. We help them out, and that's a personal thing. Sure, our church will do it, but also as individuals, I am to use my funds to help people, not give it to the government, to let them do it, because we've seen, and most people, it's so fun, and that's where we can unite. That undivides us as people, is that everybody thinks the other side spends the money, tax money, incorrectly. I'm kind of on the side is like I see the corruption in all of politics, but until we, if you find an individual, I recommend not giving it to a party, not giving it to the government to be able to then distribute the pennies left over from our dollars. So Christianity is calling a call to loving people, and also to give as the Holy Spirit leads you to give directly, anyway, or through your church.
Good.
Now, you want to have a couple of guests? Are you ready to take off? I got a couple of people that want to come on and say hi. They could chat other things, or without you here, or with you. It's just according to your time.
Okay, sure. I'll take a stab at it, whatever you want to do.
And this is our most favorite. One of them is our most favorite atheist. She's got her opinions, but she's fair. She actually, and I think a comment that I wanted to make is that you're sitting there and you say you want to be able to just sit and talk or do whatever you want to, but to have people that totally on a different camp be able to chat, that we can talk, dialogue, and I know even in politics before, Diamond Dave could probably tell you some politics in other countries where they're throwing stuff at each other. But right now, we've lost that. We're divided in the United States. I can't say I believe in this and I agree to disagree with, and that's where Robin's cool, because we agree to disagree on a lot of stuff, and that's the way politics should be. That's the republic we live in. Don't you agree? So I just gave him the link, and that was a question.
Was your question? Is it okay to agree to disagree? Is that
or not even okay? But wouldn't you like that?
Encouraged? Well, I think we have a system that encourages debate. Yeah, let's say our pieces.
Hello,
hey,
Robin. How are you doing?
Is my mic sound okay? I never know. Hello, how are you?
Awesome.
That's my friend John.
Oh, hello. I want to come in and give you Mike's email. He wants to get a hold of you, and I haven't been going on Facebook and stuff, and so he asked me to get a hold of you or Rich, and the only time I ever catch y'all is.
Cool. And just tell him though, if it's anything about bills, he's got to talk to my wife. She does the money. No,
bills.
Sorry.
No, you know who I'm talking about, don't you, Mike?
I do.
That guy. Okay, yeah, and I'll type it in private chat and put it up there for you. And I was just gonna catch you or Rich one. I messaged Steven, but I never did. He never has answered me yet. But I was sure he might forget to give it to you anyway. So.
Oh, he's been so crazy because you are somebody. I mean, and don't feel bad. He doesn't answer me a lot of times either. Mike, John, did he get back to you at all?
I'm kind of missing that thread, so nobody's getting back to me. What do you mean?
Yeah, I was just saying that the founder of the channel, Steven, he's got so much going on, and one of those is.
Hi, Dave.
What up? How you doing, Robin?
Oh, I've been trying to hook up my new desktop, and I'm going crazy because it's hard to do sitting in a wheelchair and hook up all them wires and stuff, and I'm sweating.
I would help you, but I live in Mongolia, so it's a bit of a trek, right? Might take me a little bit to get out there.
A little piece of Kentucky, anyway.
Yes,
just
I could ship Philip over there. It's like if I was close, I'd come help you out. But I think we could put Philip in one of those UPS boxes and get him over there, and he'd be more help with that stuff anyway. And welcome, Diamond. No, that's good. So good, you're still here. I think I put you in Siberia. That's how my brain works. But Mongolia.
That's gonna start a fight if you say that here. Just
Dan
that'll start a fight.
Dan is great at geography.
I know, right?
I'm actually pretty good in.
I will give you credit. You didn't say China, right? When I was living in America, there was a white guy who was making racial slurs against a couple Mongolian men because he thought they were Chinese, and they just beat him into a bloody pulp. Do not do that. Right.
I was telling John some of the chat. It should be down in the left-hand corner.
Oh yeah, I see it.
So Yes. So Diamond Dave was part of the Mormon Church. Now, did you do politics when you were in the?
I never voted before. I never voted before I joined or after, like before I joined the Mormon Church, because I was Hindu before I joined, and then when I left, I just went back to my Hindu traditions. I was never political because, I mean, I do it. I do admire John and like his perspectives. My only pushback would be that the way America is now is you have multi-billion-dollar corporations with lobbyists that engage in bribery, right? That's what lobbying is, as well as multi-billion-dollar super PACs that I would respectfully contend make voting irrelevant. Right. And we see that in places like, for example, Minnesota. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I spent a lot of my, a good part of my life in Minnesota. Right. And the majority of Minnesota, right, the majority of the population are conservative. If you look at the kind of, I don't know what it's called, the red and blue heat map, almost all of it is red with the exception of some areas. But conservatives keep getting blown out of the water every time due to substantially less funding, right? Combined with other factors, right? Same thing I would argue with California. John brought up that it's predominantly conservative, but you have billions upon billions of dollars that are in super PACs on the left in California, and they shut out and lock down conservatives. In my opinion, it makes voting irrelevant.
So is it right way to raise my hand? Do I have to press a button or something?
Just jump in. Just jump in.
Cool.
Just jump
All right,
I'm
Dave.
gonna jump. If you give me just a second, I'm gonna jump down though. Dan, can you get that in chat? You see it?
I got it.
Okay.
Think someone
All right.
took a picture
All right.
of it.
I'm gonna hold y'all up. Thank you.
Now, don't
It's
you
nice
want to pick
meeting
a
you.
point with us though on?
No,
So
I'm
Dave-
not gonna talk. I'm not gonna start politics with y'all. No.
Good. No, and again, this was more. And I did you hear much of it? I hope it was kind of just
No. I just seen you on, and I clicked on it so I could share that email with you because
No.
you've been worrying me to death
Okay.
about it.
Well, I mean, before John jumps in, Robin, I will say this. I am probably more right and more conservative than they are.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. Well,
So
yeah.
Dave,
Everybody's got their own choices. All right. Thanks.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you, Robin.
so can I call you Dave or Diamond Dave?
Yeah,
or
you just call me Dave, Diamond Dave.
Dave,
whatever.
far out. Okay, well, my reflection on what you said was 100% understandable. And honest, I don't think I'm naive. I 100% understand. Well, no, I don't think we fully understand how deep the corruption goes in this nation, and how our political process has been captured by the deep moneyed interests. I get it, but I can't. I don't have I don't think I have a realistic choice to give up. No, well, I mean that maybe in a couple of ways, but the one way, then reflecting on what you said, where it feels so hopeless and all that stuff, like you didn't say it that way, but it's like, why does it matter? And it's like, yeah, I know what you mean. Does it matter? I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's very significant built-in voter fraud mechanisms built in. I just know it. However, there's a point that somebody made once, and it was like, well, if they had full control, they wouldn't still be playing this game. They still wouldn't be going through the motions, right? So I don't think that the powers that be that desire to have no competition, I don't think they've got it fully in the bag yet. I really don't. And I think we can still affect things at the margin. We can still. There was just anecdotally. I don't have a specific one, but I hear every once in a while of races, maybe local races.
Sure.
Who are decided by 100 votes, 100 votes. And so that's why I say, I'm just, again, my message is to Christians. I'm not here to lecture you or anyone else.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm only talking to my own tribe, really. Okay. And I'm saying, you know what, if we just, took a pro-life issue or an anti-corruption issue, it is unbiblical to pay or receive a bribe. And that's the concept that came to mind when you're talking about those PACs, those deep money PACs. It's essentially bribery, in this way and that way. So that is unbiblical. So if Christians who call themselves biblical, if they would just send in their ballot, hey, maybe, there was a phrase in the last election, too big, too rigged, there's a nice little lilt to that. Well, it had some cachet because it was true. They made it too big to rig. And we've got to stop being demoralized. I'm demoralized. I'm trying not to be demoralized. I
That makes
recognize
sense.
demoralization, and I'm trying to say, hey, brother, let's not be demoralized. If they had it in the bag, they wouldn't be still doing the game.
So I mean that I do see that. My thing is that the powers that be, I think, would still play the game, because if you keep people divided, they cannot turn on you. They're too busy fighting each other, and especially now in America, with like identity politics, which America, I mean, granted, you have some European countries that do it, but America is one of a handful of the countries on the planet that does identity politics at all. Like, it's not a thing here in Mongolia. You say identity politics, nobody's going to know what that means. Or any part of like Asia or Africa, right? And so I think they would still do it, because like there's something about the American spirit where they have to keep people divided, especially with how diverse it is, right? Because if you look at Americans as a whole after Hurricane Katrina, or the financial collapse of 2008, black folks, white folks, everybody kind of banded together, right? But I think that in order to keep people divided so they stay in power, they have to play the identity politics, and they do have to play these games, and they would still have to play these games, even with Christians on the right to some extent, maybe not to the same extreme on the left, but they would more play. And this is just my opinion, but it's my opinion that, even conservatives will use different denominations of Christianity against their own constituents or other people, right? Just so they can stay in power and keep the system that is B. But you're right. I mean, the lobbying is bribery. It's 100% bribery. And that's why many people globally, like Americans like to think that America is respected in the world. It's not, because it claims to be the beacon of freedom, and it claims to be the moral high ground. But you have super PACs, you have the same bribery that we do. The difference is we're open about it. America, well, no, it's true. America denies it, right? I've talked with Americans, and Americans will say, we don't have bribery. Super PACs are legal. It's fine. And I'm like, yeah, but how is that different than me calling my wife's uncle who's in politics here in Mongolia and like speed lining my permanent residency? It's the same thing. It's connections. It's money. There's no difference.
So, Dan, can I say something?
Oh, yeah, go ahead for it.
So, this is something that's super frustrating to me, because, America, first of all, is a giant country, right? 330 million plus, whatever. And so, yes, we do have all sorts of folk. And a lot of these ideas, these constitutional principles, I mean, they were formed when we were a relatively tiny nation, a string of colonies on the East Coast, with a more or less homogeneous culture and everything, right? Okay. More or less. All right. Mm-hmm. So now, what is America? Well, it's obviously a lot of history has happened, and we are not united. We're too big to be homogeneous anymore. That's just for sure. And so one thing that I kind of that gets me is, and you were just saying it in passing to making a point, was, America is perceived as, well, we're 330 million people, we're 50 states, we're how many regions could be, so defined, or even language groups, with regionalisms and so forth, cultural distinctives with South and the West and the North, they're all pretty different. But where I'm coming from with this presentation and this what I'm talking about is, I feel like America, like if you want to know my opinion, you've asked me, what's America? And I would say America is comprised of those people who believe in the Constitution. By believe, I don't mean like a religious document, but just say, yeah, this is our founding document. These are our rules. These are our values. Okay. And those are Americans. Okay, other people are also Americans. So I'm not talking about citizenship, illegal citizenship. I understand that dimension as well, but I'm talking philosophically. Philosophically, those are Americans.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and so our founding fathers, they were very much against foreign wars. Very much. They did not want to do. Of course, that kind of fell apart pretty quick with Jefferson needed to go over to the Barbary Coast and so forth. But as a principle, we were against foreign wars, foreign entanglements, I think is how they phrased it. So, all right. So my point is like if America was principally composed, politically speaking, politically minded, of people who just said, yeah, the Constitution is pretty good, and they actually understood it to any degree at all and wanted to stick to those principles. And then in addition, my whole thing is the biblical citizenship, right? Just understand where those constitutional values come from. They come from Christian roots. They come from studying the Old Testament. Okay? The Bible informed the Constitution. You can't really separate the two. Because
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, so I just kind of been passing a little bit. I'm not really countering you in any way. I don't mean to.
No. I know that you're clarifying it.
The point that I think, if you want to say America's a hypocrite, it's like, okay, well, what about if we could get that 10% of Americans who are actually constitutionally minded? I just threw out that number. I don't think it's very many. I hope it's more than 10. Anyway, that's my point.
No, and I completely agree. And that's actually, I was reinforcing what you just said in the chat, because like when you talked about like the separation of church and state, my understanding and my interpretation of the church and state is that the separation of church and state exists, but it was initially presented so the government would not do what what Henry VIII did, where he made the Anglican Church and exterminated all other denominations of Christianity, right? So the point of church and separation, my interpretation, my understanding as a non-Christian living in a foreign country, is that it was intended for people to practice their Christian faith freely without persecution by the state. I could be wrong. That's just how I read it.
No, that was it.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I mean, America is historically Christian. America's been predominantly Christian. And you also bring up the good point that I tend to kind of poke at is America's extremely diverse. And it's like actually kind of a bizarre thing to see. And that's what I wanted to move back to India from a young age because I have family there, but I ended up meeting my wife online, and that's why I live in Mongolia now, right? But I mean, I think it's even the Bible that says that a house divided cannot stand, right? And there's so many cultures, and there are so many people groups that are specifically antithetical to Christianity, like Islam, right? And some others, right? They don't assimilate. That's where a lot of the division comes from, and I think that's a part of why we see a lot of problems in America that we do, because other countries don't tolerate it, or they like here in Mongolia, they enforce assimilation, right? They enforce assimilation. And then you do have countries that are very, very diverse when it comes to languages. Like India has 40 different separate languages, not including dialects, but traditionally it's all Indian, right? So it's still homogeneous, right? China's got multiple dialects. It's got over 1 billion people, but it's still very homogeneous, right? So it's just interesting to see how America has really allowed itself to be in the situation that it is now because it's allowed Islam and antithetical ideologies to exist, if that makes sense, within its borders.
That is absolutely true. And you've heard me say multiple times, I'm calling to my people, the church people, and I'm saying, we let it happen. It was, just this series of lapses. A lot of them were 100 years ago, allowing the Federal Reserve to take over our money supply. Crazy. Taking the
gold standard away.
Gold standard, right? Yeah. How about the direct election of senators? That was a direct dilution of states' rights and frankly, an unbalancing. It made senators really the same as House of Representatives, just different responsibility. You know, the idea of the senators with the states appointing them was to preserve the power of the states. So, and taking that away, you increase the power of the federal government, because we know that elections can be manipulated. We're talking about that. So anyway, there's a lot of unwindings, that and many other things, where the people have allowed these things to be unwound. And so you're right. Somebody at Dan, you asked, does God give us the leaders we deserve? And yeah, I think that's true in an important way.
No, and I definitely would agree with that. And I tend to harp on Christians on particular points, and this is one of them, right? Because Christians do claim to have the higher moral standard. And it's interesting to me, because, I've talked with and debated other Christians who would be like, well, you do this and you live a sinful, unrepentant life, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, yeah, but you let my father into this country. You let me be raised here, right? This is on you. This is your responsibility, right? The church historically was responsible for education. The church historically was responsible for hospitals and the education of children. You let that slip, not me. I just happen to be born here, right? And arguably, since my father is British Indian and comes from a Hindu family, he never should have married my mother, who was a Christian, in the first place. So it happened. We came to America. I was born in Minnesota. You let all this happen. This isn't my fault. This is your fault, right? Can't blame me for it.
Yeah, the same. It's that, and I won't. Islam is this whole different story, because it is a religious ideology after taking over the secular. But, as for freedoms, Hindus, I think, and I might be wrong, but I think you guys aren't going to start chopping off heads, or, you have your beliefs, and you're, just so I don't try to, even in the United States, just so I don't get in your face, you'll probably leave my face alone.
Yeah, Hindu communities typically isolate themselves, right? Like they're in Minnesota, like there's a big, massive temple, which some Christians are upset about, and that's fine. But it was 100% privately funded. The ashrams and the temples are all privately funded. They don't use tax dollars, and Hindus typically just keep to themselves and stay out of their way. Like out of other people's way. No,
and that's what I believe, because people will say, an attack, especially the South a lot of times, because they've got that, I don't know if it's a bad rap or true. I'm pretty well stuck in California and have been, but, that are like, oh, you got to believe the way I do, or go to the church on the next corner. I don't know.
I don't necessarily blame Christians for that. That's more of a, I don't think that's a Christian thing. That's more of a human thing, right? Because you'll find that anywhere you go in the world. You go to Thailand, and people, even as a foreigner, they're going to want you to participate in the Buddhist rituals, and they're going to want you to respect the king, right? Just because you're in their territory, and that's the predominant religion and a way of life, right? So just because America happens to be Christian, and I lived in Georgia. I lived 30 minutes north of Rome, Georgia, and basically an unincorporated community called Coosa near the Alabama line, right? It's the same thing, right? People are like, hey, you live here. You gotta go to church, man. That's what we do here. We all go to church, I think it's just a human thing.
It just occurs to me, we're Dave, you're talking about your different backgrounds. It's interesting, and you mentioned the Hindu temple. So my surface reflection is that I don't see that as Hindus as our political opponent. I could be, whatever. I'm sure there's some unpacking to do on that, but not really. I see my primary philosophic opponent as being secular humanists. That's the atheism, the atheists. Those are ones that are probably at war with me. To be honest, I didn't really pick them. I don't really have any animus towards them, frankly. I want
And Islam. Don't leave out Islam. Islam
sure.
wants, yeah.
They're different.
I would agree with that.
Yes, Islam is I'm sorry. I'll simply finish up. I'll say Islam definitely is an issue in a different way. Islam seems to be finding, or I would say, secular humanists are finding common cause with Islam because they both oppose Western values, and so it's easy to poke at individuals because I think honest Christians will admit their fallibility. Will admit their fallibility. Honest ones will.
And I think from you and me, John, in California, not too many Muslims. Now, Dave came from Minnesota. I think a few more there, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in Minnesota. Fun fact: before I get into my point, when I was living in Minneapolis when the Floyd riots occurred, I actually know the owner of Cup Foods who called the police. I went to his mosque in Brooklyn Park because I was studying halal finance as I was working at Wells Fargo at the time. Right, so there are a lot of Muslims in Brooklyn Park, and they do actually have the call to prayer in Brooklyn Park and parts of Minneapolis. That's not like made up. So,
yeah, it's crazy.
But to get into my point, I would say, for the most part, you're right. Hindus aren't your political opponents. I mean, you look at Tulsi Gabbard, right, for instance, who's a well-known conservative, and she has ties to the RSS and BJP, which is the very far right-wing political parties in India, right? Hindus love her. You have Kash Patel. You have who is that guy that was the Indian guy that was running in the election with Trump?
Bobby.
Him. He's a Hindu.
He ran for Ohio governor. He ran for governor of Ohio. That's what you're talking about?
Kamash.
No, let me Google this. But there's a guy, Indian president election USA, Vivek Ramaswamy. There we go. Yeah, I mean, he's a Hindu. He was conservative. Typically, I would say we're not your political opponents because we don't actively seek to fight you. There are many Hindus who will vote for the left on particular things. So, for instance, we disagree on things like abortion, right? And that's kind of a touchy subject with Hindus because we believe that the soul does not enter the body until the baby is born. So, abortion is acceptable. However, there's a huge caveat to this. There's actually two huge caveats to this.
And we'll let you finish that, and then we better get out of here. It's almost 2 hours. But yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So the first part is, and this is why I support abortion, but I'm very hesitant on it, is that while the soul is not in the body, right, you are directly interfering with the karmic balance of reincarnation, right? You are playing God in that sense. You are preventing the soul from reincarnating, and that can affect your karma. So there is that aspect to it. The second aspect to it is, and this is kind of more in the Hindu philosophy, but just so you guys understand how Hindus in America think when they vote on abortion. They may support it because a lot of Hindus I know who are from India say, we would never get an abortion ourselves, but if a non-Hindu wants to do it, that's their karma. That's on them, right? So that's why a lot of them support it. But I believe it's in the Bhagavad Gita. It specifically states that a woman who kills her child loses her caste. Basically, she becomes an untouchable. Now, there's a debate of, does that include abortion or not? Right? And so, again, that's why Hindus aren't necessarily political opponents, and they want to fight conservatives and, take over America and get rid of Christianity. It's just more of a religious difference in that specific example, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, and that's why too here.
And there are multiple opinions out there too, not just mine, because Hinduism is like the ancient Greek and Roman mythology. There's a lot of sects and there's a lot of like opinions from within each sect and practice as to how it works. So
and that's awesome. Here, you know, and that's a cool thing because, you know, Diamond Dave knows what we believe here at Proverbs Guys, but we do want to understand. We want to be able to steel man other people's arguments instead of like, oh, you're just It's like, okay, be able to, just like we were talking about, John, earlier, with just being able to talk to somebody. It's like, okay, I disagree with this. We believe that. We'll agree to disagree. You know, I'll pray for you. You'll probably pray for me. And, let, we would call it the God's spirit. Or, you know, Dave, you might say, you know, some kind of, something like that, or maybe not, but, you know, other religions. But that's awesome. There's always stuff to learn. Thanks, Dave, for
no
worries.
Thanks for letting me to jump on. But yeah, I love jumping on these discussions and throwing.
Yeah, nice talking to you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, because like I do agree. I disagree theologically with the people on the channel, but we do agree on like moral principles, right? So there's a lot, and that's to end the conversation here. Hindus and Christians get along pretty well because even though there's very fundamentally theological differences, there's a lot of similarities. We both understand Islam is a threat. We work together. We both see things like intimacy between couples as sacred. That's why people get very, very upset in India when you wave pride flags and do pride parades. You know what I mean? Right. So there's a lot of similarities. It's very family oriented. It's very traditional. It's just, we just disagree on the theology behind it.
No, exactly. And you know, we're not worried here, and I don't think you are, because we both believe that there's the spiritual realm. There is something out there. We just think, there's God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit.
And there's actions to consequences too, folks. Remember that. Spiritual consequences for physical actions. That is a thing across the board.
We do agree with that. We'll just, yes. All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, David. Dave, and I'm glad you're not close, because he would probably take my head off literally if I make that mistake of saying Siberia. Did I say Siberia earlier?
I'm just giving you a hard time. I don't care. It was more of a joke. It was more of a joke.
I know
like people here might be upset. I'm an American. I don't care.
Well, and plus, I think you've known me enough that my word, brain, because I'm picturing the area you are right above China, but it came out, to
be fair, that's a very common mistake.
Yes, but it's always fun, the Mongolia, and it's just one of those, I don't know, in our culture, just like, wow, Mongolia, and just the history and just the kind of cool stuff. You been in on any of those horses?
Not yet. My wife is trying to get me to go on a horse ride, but we're actually in a few weeks. We're going to be our 1 year marriage anniversary is coming up. Marriage, not wedding, because here you're required to go through if you're foreign, you're required to go through the government office. But so we're celebrating that. Mother-in-law is coming with to show me the countryside for the first time. Sister-in-law and her boyfriend from they live in Singapore, but they're coming on vacation here to spend time with us as a family, and I think there's other family that's going to be like tagging along with us. So
now, are you going to do some travel videos? I know you said you did. I know you said you did some stuff like trash picking up and restoration.
So on my YouTube channel, it's more of a gaming channel, but in my members only Discord, I post and sometimes on my Facebook too, I'll post pictures of restaurants and stuff that I do, right? So that my wife and I definitely agreed that my viewers have asked for it, and channel members get to see it, and I'll be posting that on Facebook too. So
Very cool. All right. That's best to everybody. Thank you, John.
Okay, Dan, thanks. We'll do it again. We'll talk we'll talk later, maybe this Thursday.
Sweet. Thanks so much. Let me see if I
All
can
right.
find
Have a good one.
cool.
Nice talking to you, Dave. Take care.
Nice talking to you too. Have a good one.
I say there's something that'll get us out of here. These are all new. I had some pretty cool exit stuff. Oh, I like this one. If I can get it on here.
Just keep us backstage so we can keep talking if you want.
Hey. You guys hear that?
Yeah, we hear it.
I hear the music, and we're still on air.
I'll try to hide everybody.
We're standing on the truth of God's holy word. The battle is raging, the energy is high, in the fight between the light and the father of lies. From the
God bless everybody. See you next time. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
taking a stand.